Is this the death of democracy in Africa? So many parts of the world, democracy is having problem, but there is something so complicated about African democracy, and especially in the West African countries. It is so unfortunate that today, the military rulers are the one teaching the so-called democratic presidents what democracy is. The other day, there were protests in Burkina Faso, yes. The other day, there were protests in Mali and in Niger as well. The military regime have never shoot one bullet against protesters. Instead, the president will walk down from his office and go and meet the protesters and calm them down, and they will hail him. Why is it that the countries like Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, who have the military president, they are so happy with the leadership of the military rulers? What is going on? Now, I was listening to a video where Ibrahim Traore, the military leader of Burkina Faso, was educating West African leaders. He was telling them that, how can you say you are a Democrat? You are telling us to come and join you as a Democrat, and you are killing your citizens who are protesting. How can it be? Is that a democracy? He said, no, that is a dictatorship. So Ibrahim Traore is directly, not indirectly, calling Tinubu a dictator. A military president is calling a democratic president a dictator. That is where I discovered that we have lost it.
Whether you're a Democrat or not, how can you impose democracy by killing millions of people? It's a dictatorship, not democracy. You can't impose it. Those who call themselves Democrats have seen scenes where people were prevented from joining assemblies. We've seen scenes where forces landed in assemblies to force deputies to take texts. We've seen more terrible scenes where people kill their demonstrators. But they call themselves Democrats, and we're called Persians. If that's democracy, I repeat, we don't want this democracy. And when you see incompetence, they don't seek to know what the real meaning of the word democracy is. They cling to the definition given to them by imperialism and start talking about democracy without really knowing the basics. That's incompetence. You have to know, look at the world to redefine democracy as we want it in Africa. Incompetence hides behind freedom. Remember, there is no individual freedom. It's a fact.
Ibrahim Traore never ceased to amaze me. He was the military leader who persuaded the Niger and Mali that they must leave ECOWAS when Tinubu assumed office. The reason why they left ECOWAS is not because they are military presidents. They have been in ECOWAS while they were military leaders, right? But when the Niger coup happened, and the West wanted to use Tinubu to carry out a military intervention in Niger, Tinubu cut out the light that was leading to Niger. He did all those things because the France and the West were pushing him to do that, because the France never wanted to leave, the Americans never wanted to leave Niger. They wanted to stay there, so they were protecting their interests, not the interests of African people. And they were using Tinubu as a puppet. That was where this man have this hatred he have against Tinubu. And when you watch this video to the end, you will understand that this man is saying nothing but the truth. How can you call yourself a Democrat and you force people into democracy? That is a dictatorship. How can you kill an innocent protesters and you say you're a Democrat? That is a dictatorship. He says Tinubu and other West African leaders that they just come out and say democracy, democracy, but they don't know what democracy is all about. They only say the words that were imposed by them, by the neo-colonists. That is what they parade. But they have never come to the level of the masses to understand that democracy means the power to the people. In other words, the masses have to say what happened, not you. So that is the message of Ibrahim Traore. This is a very long speech. I really want you to take your time and watch it to the end to understand why I said we have lost it as a country. And the time is now where we can arise and do something.
Bonjour à tous.
Hello, everyone. I would like to welcome all the young people from the 13 regions who are in the room and those who have not been able to access the room. To all the young people from Africa, to accompany the youth, welcome to the land of integral men. I would like to pay a vibrant tribute to our strong security and defense forces who fight day and night for Burkina Faso to be and remain beautiful. I would like us to take a minute to pray for those who are on the ground and also for the rest of the souls of those who have fallen for our country. Thank you. Thank you. Let us give thanks to God for allowing us to be here today to celebrate the International Youth Day in good health. I say this very often because human beings often forget God when they have no problem, when they are in happiness. But when worries come, this is when we remember God. Give thanks every day for the breath of life and for health. Youth from Burkina Faso, youth from Africa, youth, this phase of life where we have enough strength, enough energy, like the paraphrase, the slammer that has just passed. Youth is the time when we have spent enough time. We must take advantage of the time we have been given, use the energy necessary to reach our goals, to change the world, to change our world, to change the world of others positively. Children want to grow up to be young. Older people want to grow up to be young. Everyone wants to be young. Youth is a blessing. So take advantage of youth to do useful work. This is why when I see in the chosen theme, the first two words that come to mind, integration, security. Africa faces many challenges, and we must ask ourselves questions. Is youth an asset or a handicap for the development of nations? The answer is simple and unequivocal, and you know it. Developed countries mostly have an aging population, and currently many countries have launched programs to rejuvenate their populations. Africa has this chance to have a very young population. But why is Africa not developed? We must therefore look at the question of why Africa has a young population and why it is not developed, and why developed countries seek to rejuvenate their populations. We must transform our youth into a real asset and engine of development for our continent. To do this, we need integration. We need security and development. We need to unite. You will hear about the African Union. Yes, it exists, but what is the effect of the African Union? We cannot talk about integration and not talk about the African Union, because it is this organization that should unite us, create real integration. But we regret to see this war that persists on the African continent, that kills millions of young people, and that this organization, which has the head of state provided with an army, cannot organize itself to support certain countries. The union is not just a word, the union is a symbol. And we young people should learn from this situation to unite us to make integration a reality. I was unpleasantly surprised when Ethiopia, which is the seat of the African Union, experienced a conflict, and when the Prime Minister announced to close the university in Addis Ababa to face the threat, I did not see the action of the African Union to protect this seat. Western states, for the most part, saw Addis Ababa fall, fold their backpacks, and leave. Ethiopia fought, found an internal solution, and lives more or less in peace today. The children of Congo have been dying for years. Several other conflicts, such as in Sudan, exist on the continent. We would have liked to see the African Union generate the strength and all the strategies necessary to support its states so that they can find peace. We will not even talk about us here in the Sahel. For nearly 10 years, the Sahel has been the scene of international terrorism. But we see no support from these organizations to find a solution to this problem. Worse, a few days ago, a foreign country in Africa openly announced that it had supported and participated in a cowardly, terrorist, and barbaric attack against the forces of our confederation. The African Union did not say a word to condemn this interference. The African Union did not say a word to condemn this interference of a foreign state in Africa in the internal affairs of our states. I would like them to hear this shout and get out of their silence and take action so that the youth can believe in the African Union. We must unite. The only way to unite is to talk to each other, to understand each other, and to be able to establish the basis of this unity. Young people, let me tell you that to unite, there are three words, three big screws that we must ban from our behavior and our lives. I am talking about cowardice, treachery, and incompetence. We must ban these three words from our way of life. I am going to explain why. Cowardice covers many screws. A coward is always afraid. And when we are afraid, we become slaves. We bend. We lick our boots. Our ancestors were not cowardly. And if we are cowardly, our children will ask us questions. Imagine that in Burkina Faso we refuse to fight and we accept to submit, to live in slavery. Tomorrow our children will grow up and they will ask themselves questions. Have our parents been cowardly to leave us in slavery? Whether we are alive or dead, we will feel it. Cowardice is afraid, and the imperialists have understood that they are trying to scare the leaders so that they become cowards. Because when you are a coward, all the other screws can be born. We do everything so that we are afraid. They come to our palaces. They threaten us directly or with veiled threats. Of course, we respond as it is necessary. They try to make us understand. They take examples every time. They tell us, you know, Thomas Sankara tried to do this, but he is dead. President Haitian tried to do this, but he is dead. Gaddafi tried to do this, but he is dead. These are words that we take in a veiled way to scare us. And we often see some young people trying to take our path in a different way. We can hear them say, such and such person ruled like this, he is in his country. Such and such person ruled like this, he is in prison. All this to try to scare us so that we become cowards. But I think they didn't understand one thing. When we say country or death, we win. It's not just a sentence. It's not just a sentence. It all makes sense. We are not afraid and we will never be afraid.
Ils ont fait peur sûrement à beaucoup de chefs d'État africains.
They probably scared a lot of African heads of state. They probably scared a lot of African heads of state. You see, often when we express ourselves or when we have the opportunity to be in certain situations abroad, we often say something to call on African heads of state to wake up and take care of our youth so that we can start our real development. We are often misunderstood. Some have publicly opposed us. Some have publicly opposed us because they feel indexed. But I can assure you, youth, that when we find ourselves in the corridors, these same heads of state tell us that we are on the right track and that this is what needs to be done so that Africa can rise again. So we ask them questions like, why don't you do like us? Why don't you support us? Some tell us that they have the means, and some tell us that they can't. Dear elders, African heads of state, at the end of this podium, I would like to say that African peoples are the most peaceful. That African peoples are the most peaceful. When you recognize a wrong, you have to tell the people. When you recognize a wrong, you have to tell the people. We are not afraid to come out and tell the people we are sorry. We have been compromised. We have been mistreated, we have been compromised by several things, and we ask for forgiveness, and we come back on the right path and to start working really for the independence of our states and our emancipation. And I think it is possible. If we remain in this posture of fear, we will be cowardly and history will judge us. Our children will ask questions, our grandchildren will ask questions. We are writing history. There is no place for cowardice. If our ancestors had been cowardly, we would not be here. Do you remember? I will give you an example of the people of Bamileke and Bassa. I want to talk about the Cameroonians, the union of the population of Cameroon, which since the 1950s has started a relentless fight against the Poles, but they have been massacred. The French colonial armies, in turn, have dispatched infantry battalions, tanks, helicopters, have annihilated anti-village. The most inhuman tortures have taken place during this period. You can do research on what they call the cart or the bakasima. Hundreds of thousands of people have been decimated in Africa because they dared to ask their settlers to leave their land. A civil war that lasted several years. That is to say that people dared to face the imperialists with their bare hands so that we could be here. There is no reason why we cannot face the imperialists so that our future generations can live. There are many examples throughout Africa of brave men who refused to be cowardly, who fought, who faced. Well, let us be worthy of these people. We are their descendants, and let us be worthy of them. A coward cannot be worthy. Let us not be cowards, young Africans, because a coward is always a traitor. And it goes hand in hand. They will try to frighten us so that we become cowards. And if we are cowards, we will betray. We must ban the treachery of our habits. Africans have been traitors so that the slave trade succeeds in Africa. It is because Africans have been traitors that colonization has been able to sustain in Africa. Let us question history. We will see. Lumumba, Patrice Lumumba, was betrayed because he dared to hold his head. And these same beautiful televisions came to the Congo for a few bids extended to individuals in the Congo for an interview to please their population. And you were able to follow that. Lumumba bothered us. He is dead. We are happy. It is treachery. Many other heroes have fallen so that we are here today. And it is a technique of imperialism to frighten others by taking action to really create terror. It has not started today. I will give you the example of a warrior who fought, Victor Biakaboda. Read it and you will understand. He came from a family of chiefs. No chiefdom given by the colonizer. He was a worthy child. He studied in Senegal, I believe. He became a doctor in Guinea. And when the RDA was created, he went to the Ivory Coast region to fight against imperialists, against invaders, against the colonizer. He tried to organize the Ivorian society. Everywhere, people began to speak up. There was a general in his time, Pichu, who massacred the Ivorian population so that this spirit of freedom could never germinate. He continued his fight alongside Efewersi Lix Ufeboigny. They fought. But the most violent was Victor Biakaboda. He represented a threat to the imperialists. What did he do? In addition to massacring the people who demonstrated, one night they killed him in an atrocious way next to Bois-Flancy. A few hours later, when the people of Dimbakro heard the murder, they marched, they demonstrated. They were massacred by the colonial army. History was killed. The facts are there. After his death, which scared FOC Lix Ufeboigny, they called him and told him, if you continue the fight, you will meet the same fate. He was afraid and he joined imperialism. He was appointed minister in France and later he came to take the reins of the Ivorian Accord. They used him to eliminate many other people who dared to raise their voices. I think Thomas Sankara is a good example. If you are afraid, you will be cowardly and you will be a traitor. Never be afraid. The fight must continue. There are many other examples around the world. And there is this phenomenon that they have also used for a long time and that they continue to use. You see, some individuals, for example, have found themselves in other countries and created a so-called parallel government to the Malian government. You have heard this story. It is a technique that has existed for a long time. I will give you the example of Ahmed Chalabi, Iraq. This math teacher, who was even in the Iraqi government, was recaptured by the imperialists, and he formed this semblance of parallel government in Iraq, in the United States. And he was used to be the sheep of sacrifice, because it was to him that it was said that Saddam Hussein was developing weapons of mass destruction, and he did it. They used him, and this Talibi was used to kill millions of children in Iraq and destroy Iraq. And do you know what was the fate of Chalabi? One evening after an interview, he said that he knew that the CIA was on his back. A few hours later, he was found dead in his bed, dead of a heart attack. If you betray, you will have macabre endings. That's how it is. Imperialism has no friends. Imperialism uses you. And when it finishes using you, it does what it wants with you. Follow my gaze. You understand what I'm talking about. It has always been like this. The third vice that I invite you to leave is incompetence. I'm coming back to the word of the Islamist who walked on my tongue. Incompetence. You understand what I'm talking about. Incompetence is a very dangerous phenomenon that they use to destroy African society. In our administrations, there is a lot of incompetence. Let's recognize it. Incompetence have a lot of space next to imperialism. Because incompetence can take over the development of a country. Incompetence can lead you to doubt yourself. Incompetence love ease. Incompetence love everything for themselves. Incompetence don't like those who are competent. They don't like those who innovate, those who seek. Incompetence are dangerous. When you are enlightened, incompetence don't like you. When you want to innovate, incompetence don't like you. Incompetence only recognize those who are competent, and they will fight him until his last breath. Because he is afraid of those who are competent. Seek knowledge. Seek knowledge and work. Work hard to be competent. Ban incompetence. Because through distractions that we want to make us adopt, we become incompetent. I'll give you an example. Social networks are the places where information is published today. People are informed through the internet. A young man who publishes an article on his farm, or an agricultural project or a scientific project may not have 1,000 views. But a young man who publishes on futility has millions of views. As the young slammer said, we want to waste your time on futility. Be aware. Let's focus on work and seek knowledge. Let's seek competence. It's good to be distracted, but we must work first before being distracted. Seek knowledge, otherwise you'll waste your time doing nothing.
Cherchez la connaissance, sinon vous perdrez du temps à ne rien faire.
Youth is the time when you must use your time wisely.
Il faut exploiter son temps à bon escient. Les impérialistes le savent.
The imperialists know this.
Ils vont multiplier tout ce qui est événement de distraction. Ils vont multiplier tout ce qui est.
That's why they multiply all events of distraction.
pour que vous soyez des incompétents.
They multiply all events that can distract you from work so that you become incompetent. When you fall asleep, you choose the incompetent to lead the important structures. You have no choice but to fold. Let's not be incompetent. Let's seek knowledge.
Les incompétents se cachent souvent derrière des mots.
Incompetents often hide behind words. They use the terms democracy and freedom without realizing what they mean. Democracy is a state of mind as much as youth is a state of mind. Whether you're a Democrat or not, how can you impose democracy by killing millions of people? It's a dictatorship, not democracy. You can't impose it. Those who call themselves Democrats have seen scenes where people were prevented from joining assemblies. We've seen scenes where forces landed in assemblies to force deputies to take texts. We've seen more terrible scenes where people kill their demonstrators. But they call themselves Democrats, and we're called Persians. If that's democracy, I repeat, we don't want this democracy. And when you see incompetence, they don't seek to know what the real meaning of the word democracy is. They cling to the definition given to them by imperialism and start talking about democracy without really knowing the basics. That's incompetence. You have to know, look at the world to redefine democracy as we want it in Africa. Incompetence hides behind freedom. Remember, there is no individual freedom. It's a fact. Do you really think everyone is free? Freedom is collective. As long as we live in a society with rules, freedom is collective. Because if you don't respect the rules, you can't live in society. If you're free to speak as you please, the other is free to answer as he pleases. That would be disorder. If you're free to walk the streets and pass traffic lights as you please, the other is free to pass by and hit you. You understand that if individual freedom takes over, we are in a society of disorder. That's why there are rules in society. And everyone has to respect the rules. That's why we're talking about collective freedom. Some people have the right to speak about their individual freedom, but they don't care about others. I think that's also part of incompetence. Because they don't try to understand. They make up the rights given by the states to serve and do everything for themselves, neglecting the freedom of others. No, freedom is collective. Before we act, we think about the freedom of others, and we shouldn't transcend the freedom of others. So we need to have a reserve. And once we have a reserve, individual freedom doesn't exist. Freedom is collective, and we need to have this culture of collective freedom. So let's seek knowledge, let's read, let's interrogate history. Don't read the history they wrote in their favor. Seek knowledge through several sources, and you will understand in history who fought for Africa, how we must fight to continue this struggle of our ancestors. And I won't finish my words without making a statement about communication. Because, as I said, it's the fatal weapon of imperialism. And you young people, you must do everything to distinguish the true from the false. We will continue to dismantle the lies of imperialist media that always try to create problems in Africa. Because these media, through their mouths, can make you a king tomorrow. Through their mouths, they can make you leave your position as king and make you a poor slave tomorrow. Pay attention. I was following a program, unfortunately not long ago, in Burkina Faso, where a young journalist released a sentence that left me a little perplexed. He was talking about North Korea, and the journalist said, "But he is starving in North Korea." Has he taken care of going to North Korea to investigate to see if he is really starving? Since imperialist media have sold North Korea is more developed than many European countries. And because these media tell us that North Korea is a dictatorship, people are starving, they are poor, they have nothing, we take it here. But North Korea is a nuclear power. How did they do it? Let's pay attention to communication. We must not blindly follow these lying media that only try to divide Africa. It is logical. They fight for the interests of their people. And the interest of their people is that Africa is divided. So, young people of Burkina Faso, young people of Africa, we must unite. We must ban cowardice. We must ban incompetence. We must ban treachery and all the risks in our society. We have the opportunity to speak. We thank God for these opportunities that we have each time to speak, to raise awareness. And I invite you to spread the word, to get to work so that the Africa that we want, self-sufficient in terms of food, is a reality. So that the Africa that we want for harmonious development is a reality. Let me finish because I return to your theme. There is no peace and security without development. The two go hand in hand. If there is no development, there is no security. Because if there is no development, the youth will inevitably find themselves in the vice and there will be no security. If there is no security, there is no development. So the two must go hand in hand. Let's integrate this in our fights so that we can fight and develop. Let's go towards production. Let's produce enough. Let's transform our raw materials so that they are beneficial for our populations and in terms of exportation. I wish you a very good day of reflection on the chosen theme and also on the essential role of youth in this fight. Good luck to all. May God make sure that all those who have made the trip return home in good health and that we can meet again when we wish it by the grace of God. La patrie ou la mort.